everyone, welcome back to another video. So I pulled out Erie's Romantic Country. This is the first tale. I absolutely love this coloring book. And most of you have seen this coloring book a whole lot in my Tips and Tricks series. If you've not seen that series, I'll make sure that's linked in the upper right hand corner. But that entire series is full of little tips and tricks and things that you could do to improve your coloring skills. I put up a post in my Facebook asking what videos y'all would like to see. A lot of times when I put up those posts, it's usually requests that I've already done. And so I spend a lot of time linking videos, and I find that sometimes those posts are very, very helpful because there's so many videos on my channel that y'all have not seen yet. And so those posts really usually serve two purposes. But one of the most requested ideas that I get is how to color with oil-based pencils. I know I hear from a lot of you all the time that I'm always pulling out my Prismacolors, but Prismacolors are just my absolute favorite, and the Holbeins are one of my new favorites as well, but both of those are wax-based. So I pulled out my Polychromos today, and I'm going to show you how I color with oil-based pencils, because that has been one of the biggest requests that I get. And even though I have had a couple videos that I've shared oil-based versus wax-based pencils, and I've even colored with oil-based pencils and used my Polychromos, I still continuously get that request. So that's what we're going to do today. So if you have Romantic Country, you can follow along in that book. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use oil-based pencils, how to lay them down on your coloring page, how to lay down your lightest colors and your darkest colors, where to lay the highlights, where to lay the shadows, and all of that. If you check the description box down below, you will find everything down there that you see in this video, as well as links to my email list, my Facebook group, my Patreon, and I now also have channel membership. You can check that out by clicking the join button down below. So I have a page already picked out, and I've already picked out some of my colors. I thought we could color this cute little image down here together. And now that all of my videos are live premieres, if you have this book, feel free to pull it out. And I'm going to go over the colors that I have out so far. I may be pulling in more colors. As I pull out more colors, I will definitely let you know what I am pulling out. Now, I did already swatch all of these colors I have here off to the side on a scrap sheet of paper, like I always do. I always tell y'all all the time, make sure before you lay any colors down on your coloring page or whatever image it is that you're coloring, that you make sure that you test your colors out on another piece of paper. Now the Polychromos, most of you know I don't use these often. They do perform very differently than a wax-based pencil. The wax-based pencils were sort of just smushed together, especially Prismacolors. They just smush and they blend, and the colors just come together seamlessly. Now, when you're using an oil-based pencil, it is much, much different. You have to layer the colors in lots of light layers, and it does take a little bit longer to get the colors down on the paper, and it is a little bit of a learning curve. We're all zoomed in now, and I think I have a pretty good angle here that is comfortable for me. Anytime you want to color anything on your coloring pages, make sure that you flip your page, put your page exactly where it's most comfortable to you so that you can make sure your colors are going down in the right way and you're not uncomfortable. Okay, so I thought we could color these cute little pumpkins here first. And I chose some colors here for my pumpkins. I have burnt sienna, sanguine, and then ivory, and the last one is terracotta. And I have found when I am using oil-based pencils that it is easiest for me to lay my darker colors down first. So I'm going to start with the color that I selected. That is a brown, and this is burnt sienna. But I'm only going to lay this darkest color very, very lightly, only where these lines are, where I would want to have a little bit more dimension. And so this is, of course, going to be my shadow color. And you can see that I'm holding the pencil pretty far back, and I'm just very lightly laying this shade of brown down here. Because, of course, this is a pumpkin, and I don't want to have a whole lot of brown. This is a lighter brown. I tried to pick one of the lighter ones that would go well with the other colors that I decided to use. Now I have the sanguine, and I'm going to very lightly go over the burnt sienna. And you can see that I'm just laying very, very light layers, and I'm just going over the other colors. Now I have terracotta, and I'm going to, again, layer over those other colors. And like I said, when I'm using oil-based pencils, I find that I like to go from dark to light and lay the colors down in that order. Now I'm going to grab what I decided to use for my highlight color, and this one is ivory. And so I'm just going to go over all of the colors and I'm going to pull them into each other. And again, this is just forming another light layer. Now I'm going to come back with my darkest color again, the sienna or the burnt sienna. And I'm going to come back in here and I'm just going to start adding lots of dimension. See how by adding that color, it just really makes it look like it is starting to pop after coming back and adding that color. I don't want to add too much in here because where I have this pumpkin and this pumpkin, I want to make sure that I have a lot of this color over in here because it looks as though this pumpkin here is actually laying behind this pumpkin. And anywhere you have an image or an object laying behind another one, you want to make sure that you lay your darkest color in that area. This one's a lot easier for me to color because of the angle. It's so hard to film and get the right angle and make sure that all of you can see and I'm still in frame and it's comfortable for me at the same time. So I'm just coming over here, adding another layer, and you could see that my layers are very, very light. If you are someone who is a heavy-handed colorist, I feel like using an oil-based pencil is really good because you really have to learn how to lay that color down. And if you go right in and you start adding a bunch of really dark, hard pressure layers, you're not going to get the look that you're going for. You're going to use up all the tooth of the paper, especially in this coloring book. There's not a whole lot of tooth in these coloring books, but I find that the Polychromos lay down very, very nicely in these coloring books. Now I'm going to come back with my next color and I'm going to lay another layer. This is the sanguine. But you can see as I continue to just lay those layers one over another, the colors become more and more vibrant. But it's all about just layering your colors and coming back and layering your colors and going in order from darkest to lightest. And I'm going to start over here on this pumpkin and start going over this darkest color here. It's so much easier to do this pumpkin because the angle that I have the coloring book laying at. And again, I have this little milk bottle here and I'm going to try to keep it a little bit lighter over in here because the milk bottle, as you can see, looks like it is laying behind the pumpkin. And so when I come back and I color that, I want to make it look as though it's laying behind. So this area in here and all over here is probably going to be much darker. Now I have the terracotta, and you can see as I'm laying these colors down, I'm not being that particular about where to lay my highlights and where to lay my shadows and all of that, because if you spend too much time focusing on just that when you're coloring, I feel like it really takes away all the fun of coloring. And coloring should be fun and it should be relaxing, and you don't want it to be overwhelming. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking that maybe my pumpkins need a little bit of yellow in here. So I'm gonna grab another one of these colors that I have here, be a little bit daring. This was one of the colors I had chosen for the wagon. This is dark Naples ochre. And I'm going to add a little bit of this color in here. Oh, that is pretty. I think that actually looks even better than the ivory I had chosen. So I'm going to do the same thing over here so that they look the same. And that just goes to show y'all, as you're coloring, even if you've chosen to do something, you can change your mind after you get the colors laid down on the page. And like I said, if you're not sure, make sure that you do test it before you lay those colors down. So I'm going to come back in here with my burnt sienna and I'm going to try to intensify these shadows just a little bit more. And I am using a little bit harder pressure. You could see that I've moved my fingers down quite a bit so I can get a little bit more of that color down on the page. And I want to very lightly add this burnt sienna down here where the pumpkin is touching the wagon, just because I want to make it look like this pumpkin is actually laying inside the wagon. And I'm using this color just to go over it a little bit more, just to give it a little bit more depth and dimension. And I know most of you have seen a lot of my videos where I'm using Prismacolors, and you've used Prismacolors yourself, and a lot of you are very familiar with those. And you see how those just sort of smush together and they blend down and the color goes down on the paper immediately when you lay that color down. But it's not generally the same when you're using oil-based pencils, especially the Polychromos, because they lay down in layers. And as you lay the layers down, the color continues to intensify. And it does take a little bit more time to get the color down on the paper. So you do have to be a little bit more patient. I'm trying to make sure these colors have a pretty good blend. So I'm going over that brown again. This is the sanguine again. And I think I like how my pumpkins look at this point. I'm just going to come back with this dark Naples ochre, and I'm going to add a little bit more of this just to bring these colors together. And I think these adorable little pumpkins will be completed. And I've already been filming this for 22 minutes. So I don't know how much of this we're going to get through, but I really just wanted to make a video to show y'all how to lay down an oil-based pencil. And looking at those two little pumpkins, you can see that after laying down layer after layer after layer, you can see that it looks a lot like if I were to have used my Prismacolors or any other wax-based pencil. Just laying them down, the technique is a little bit different. So I think we're going to go ahead and color in the wagon. And the colors that I chose for the wagon, I think I was going to bring in the burnt sienna with this as well. So I've got burnt sienna, green gold. My next color is, I'm trying to read these upside down. That really does not help. But the next color is light yellow ochre. And this one is dark Naples ochre. And I wanted to make sure my wagon was mostly yellow because I wanted to be able to bring in some of the colors from the pumpkin into the wagon. And like I said earlier, I like to do my darkest color first. So I'm going to sort of lay a little bit of this color down. And when I'm coloring the wagon, I want to add just a little bit of texture. So I'm going to use these lines that are already in the artwork sort of as a guide. I'm going to add a little bit of my own thing in there too, pulling this down a little bit more down here at the bottom. And all around where the wheel is, I'm going to make sure it's darker there because again, the wheel is laying over the actual wagon. And I think this is actually supposed to be a sign. It just sort of looks like a wagon. But either way, whether it was a sign or a wagon, I would color both of them the same exact way because I want to make it look like a wagon. And I'm going to sort of go in a circular motion and pull a little bit of this brown up so that when I come back with my next color, it sort of just blends in. And I know I keep calling it brown, but hopefully y'all remember it's actually burnt sienna. Okay, so the next color in line, again, I'm going from darkest to lightest. I have green gold, and I'm just going to add some of this color in here. And again, for this, I am trying to create texture, so I'm doing it a little bit differently than I did the pumpkins. So this is like a few tutorials in one. You're learning how to lay down the colors, where I would lay my highlights and my shadows and all of that. And we are creating some texture here. I'm going to come up here. This is my second to darkest color, so I want to get quite a bit of it here. But I had used the burnt sienna right here where I did the pumpkins. So I want this color that's over here to look a little bit different. So I don't want to put the burnt sienna here. I want to make sure my burnt sienna is only here where the pumpkins are to make those pumpkins look like they're laying behind. And I'm trying to make sure that I'm blending this color right into the burnt sienna. And you could see when I blend those two colors together, it sort of changes the color and it doesn't look as brown anymore. It lightens it up quite a bit, so it makes that brown or the burnt sienna look more like it is just a shadow, which is the look that I'm going for. Because I really want this wagon sign to look like it has a lot more yellow in it, or shades of gold rather than the brown. But the brown is what you would use to create the shadows. So the next one that I have is light yellow ochre, and I'm going to start blending this color into the other ones, creating another layer. And you see how the colors are still fairly light, but you could still see those lines where I was trying to create some texture, and we are going to come back and intensify those quite a bit. And so you can see that using oil-based pencils will take you just a little bit longer, but they are fun to use, and they are a little bit of a learning curve, and they will also force you not to have such a heavy hand, because if you go in immediately with a heavy hand, like I said, you may not be happy with the outcome. This color here is dark Naples ochre, and I'm going to just make another layer with this color and blend it into the others. I have the burnt sienna again, and I'm going to come in here and start creating just a little bit more texture with this color. And remember, I'm only using this color to create texture with it and the shadows. And you can see just by going back and forth like this and making those lines that it adds texture to our little wagon sign here. Okay, so I'm going to come down the sides here where I want a lot more shadows because I really want it to stand out in those areas. And that's what's going to help it to look like it's really just popping off the page by going over these lines. And the lines in this particular coloring book, or this series of coloring books, it is very easy to cover the lines just because the lines are more of a gray line art. And I don't know how many of you know this, but the artist of these coloring books actually did all of this with a toothpick. See how adding in some of this brown and just going back and forth, it is creating what looks like texture. And then again, I'm going to go down here on the outside of the wagon. And I'm sort of going in a circular motion because I want to spread that color out. Again, just like when you're using wax-based pencils, it goes the same for the oil-based pencils. You don't want to see any harsh lines. So you need to make sure to come back with your next color and always blend those colors out. So as I'm going down the sides of this wagon sign, I'm going to go straight up and down, and then I'm going to go in a circular motion as I pull the color out just a little bit, and that will help to blend it into the other colors. Now I'm going to come back and turn this way a little bit, and I'm going to do the same thing over here on this side, because if you can see here, this one still looks a little bit more harsh. And I want to make sure that I blend that out really, really well. Now I have the green gold, and I did just sharpen it because when you are working with texture and trying to create any kind of texture on anything, or doing animal fur, coloring something that you want to look like wood like this, you need to make sure that you've got a sharp lead on your pencils. And you can see that I am using these colors to create balance with them. So for instance, the burnt sienna that I used up here, I also used down here. The dark Naples ochre that I used up here when I decided to come back in the pumpkins, I also used down here. So it's sort of just bringing all of those colors together and creating balance on my image. And down here, because I have the wheel sort of laying over the top, I would imagine there's not a whole lot of highlighted area down in here, so I'm going to make that a little bit darker. And I don't know if you can tell now, but now that I have a lot of that color laid down, it is much easier to lay even more color down. And as I continue to come back and lay more color down, you can see that pigment just piling onto the paper. I'm going to come back with this dark Naples ochre, and I am going to fill in some more of these areas here. And then I am going to grab my burnt sienna one more time, and I'm going to go back over here, and I'm just going to create a little bit more texture with this. Do you see what a difference that makes? And look how the color just lays right down now. This is now the green gold, and I'm just coming back now and piling on those layers. Okay, so I just sharpened this one, and this is the dark Naples ochre, and I'm going to come back and just add some of this as well. And when I'm sharpening these, I am using my Jarlink pencil sharpener. They work very, very well in that pencil sharpener. Those of you that have not seen that review for that sharpener, I will go ahead and link that in the upper right hand corner. But this is my Jarlink sharpener. I need to empty it. It's quite full right at the moment. And I always do leave it on 3, and that tends to give me the perfect point on all of my pencils, no matter what pencil I am using. And I can come back here and continue to keep adding layers, but for the sake of the video, I don't think I'm going to do that. I think that y'all could see the texture. You could see if I come back with the brown again and I just add a little bit more of this, the color can just lay down again and again and again. And it adds so much dimension and texture. And look how, as I continue to just keep adding the color, it changes it up so much. Is that not so beautiful? Gosh, y'all, I need to start pulling out my Polychromos quite a bit more because they are really fun to color with. They just do require a bit of a learning curve, but as you continue to use them, you will see how much fun they are, and you sort of just learn as you go. And if you do something and you're like, oh, I like that, then you just continue to do the same thing. So I was going to color my little milk bottle here with grays. And so I did choose some grays, and I've got quite a few laying here. The first color I have is Warm Gray 5. And I assume down in here this is going to be fairly dark because there is not a whole lot of light that would be coming into that area there. And of course I'm going to go right here where this line is because I want to create some depth and dimension right there between the bottle and the little sign that says milk on it. Now I have Warm Gray 3, and I'm going to go over that color and pull it just a little bit. This one should be fairly quick. I'm going to use those same two colors, and I'm going to do the top of the bottle here, and then I'm just going to pull the color a little with this lighter gray. Again, this is the Warm Gray 3, and I think I'm just going to use white to go over these colors and blend them together, because I'd like to keep quite a bit of a highlight over here in this area. And then of course I'm going to come back with my darkest color now that I have all the colors laid down where I want them, and I'm going to use this just to create a little bit more depth and dimension. And then I'm going to blend it out a little bit with the Warm Gray 3. And I did use the warm grays because I'm using warm colors, and I really didn't want to use any cool colors on this object because I just wanted it to be all warm colors. I find that those go together super, super pretty, and when it all comes together, it just looks really beautiful. Oh, I do need to color the little tops on the pumpkin. I think that I want to do those in green. I went with more of an olive green, so I have olive green yellowish, and I'm going to use this just to color the tops in. And I'm not going to go all the way in just because I want to create a little bit of a highlight in there, and I'm going to try to do that by using the white of the paper. So I'm going to go a little bit darker and then a little bit lighter, and I'm going back and forth just to pull that color through. And I think that looks good. See what you could do with just one color in a tiny, tiny little space. How about if we do a green wheel? That would be so fun. And I think it would be bring the green from the little tops of the cute little pumpkins down into this wheel here. Okay, so I chose another color, and this one is earth green. And I'm going to see what I could do with just two colors. And I might use a little bit of that ivory. We'll see. So let me come in here, and I'm just going to, now that I've done all of the instruction and everything else, I want y'all to see how it comes together. So I'm just going to color this, and I'm going to speed it up to music. I didn't like, after I colored it all in, how it looked. When I just used the olive green yellowish, it wasn't dark enough for me. So I did grab the chrome oxide green, and I outlined the whole entire wheel. And if you were watching, you could see how that made such a difference and made it really pop and add a whole lot more of depth and dimension. And so I may come back up here and just go over that just a little bit. Oh, how cute. So I think I want to go ahead and bring in the green. So I think I'm going to go ahead and use the green on the milk bottle and on these as well. And I think that will make all of the colors just come together really, really nicely. And then I'm going to grab some yellows for the little duck here, and it's going to be completed. So for the milk bottle, I'm going to use mostly the lighter colors. And like I said, I want to start with my dark and then go to my light. So I have the olive green yellowish, and I'm going to just add this color in here. And I don't want this too dark. I'm already, I think, going to have to come back in, go over all the little wording and everything, and I'll show you how I do that. This one is the earth green. So I'm blending all these colors together, and then of course I will come back with this color and add a little bit more just to create some more shadows. As I said earlier, down here in this corner, it would naturally be a lot darker because the milk bottle is laying behind that pumpkin. And then over here in this area as well, where I had the gray. And then right here, I want to make it look as though this milk bottle is actually laying behind the pump, or laying behind the wagon sign. So I'm going to intensify that area with color just by adding more layers. And then I'm going to come back with the earth green again, and I'm just going to blend some of those colors out, go over them, adding another layer. And again, you can see as I come back and I add more and more layers, the colors get darker and darker. And then we just need to color in this little part of the bottle right here. That's just a real quick color. And I have my darkest green, so this is the chrome oxide green. And I'm just using this to add in extra shadows. See how it creates a whole lot more depth and dimension there? And then down here where I want it to look a lot darker, and over here where I want it to still look like that milk bottle is setting behind that wagon sign. And I'm also going to come up here on the side, and then I'm going to come back with my olive green yellowish, and I'm just going to blend some of these colors out by adding another layer and intensifying the color just a little bit more. And now I just need to do these, and I think they're going to be green too. Y'all, when I started this, I had no idea that I was going to be adding green anywhere. So I am using the chrome oxide green here, and I'm not going to do a whole lot to these. These are just going to be really quick. I think I'm actually going to pull them out with the earth green because it's such a tiny little space. And I'm just going to do a really quick color and color in this cute little duck. And I'm using the colors that I already used just because I want to continue to bring balance to the page. And then I'm just going to grab a little bit of brown. I keep calling this brown, y'all. This is burnt sienna. Right here where this little eye is, and then over here. And I'm not going to do a whole lot to this duck. I just want to make some of those lines go away or go over the gray line art just to make him stand out just a little bit. Okay, y'all, and the last thing I want to do is I grabbed my Posca pen. And to get your Posca pen going, you just push on it. If you don't already have Posca pens, I will have a link down in the description box below where you can get them, but these are so much fun. So I'm just going to put a little dot in each one of these just to add a little bit of a highlight here. I'm going to do the same thing over here, and then maybe in the top of the pumpkins here in the stem. A few little highlights here in the pumpkins. If you lay down your Posca and you don't like the way it looks, you just pick it right back up. And I always like to tap when I'm using my Poscas because I like to spread that paint out. I added a little too much there. But if you add a little bit too much or you do something like that, you can always come back and go back over it with your colored pencils. So don't ever worry about that. And then maybe down here, some lines. Oh, I like how that looks. And then here, I'm not tapping it or blending it out or anything. I just want it to look a little bit more natural. But look how good that looks. I love it. And then maybe here in our little sign on our milk bottle, we could add a little bit. Oh, I like that. Oh, and maybe a tad bit over here. And then up there on the top of the milk bottle. And then I have one last step because these words have pretty much gotten faded out. So we're going to go over those in black fine liner. I just need to find my black fine liner. Actually, I have my Sarasa clip pen, and these are really, really great because they are super, super thin when they write. So I'm just going to go over the writing here. They seem to be going over the colored pencil quite nicely. Anytime you're coloring and you go over words like this, you can always come back with your fine liners. And I don't usually use this Sarasa pen. I usually use my Stabilo fine liners or my Tri-Plus fine liners, but I'm not sure where my black one is. But this one worked really nicely. Now, the reason here that I laid the Posca down first is because I want to be able to come back and lay this over the top. So I'm hoping that Posca is dry. Oh, and look how nicely this pen lays right over that Posca. Oh, I love them. This is one of my absolute favorite pens. It writes really, really fine. It's a 0.5, but out of all the 0.5 pens that I have tried, I am a bit of a pen addict. And I've showed the collection of pens I have, but I am a bit of a pen addict too, not just colored pencils, but these are one of the best that I've ever bought. Okay, y'all, we are totally done. I love the way that this turned out. It is absolutely beautiful. I love how all of the colors came together. We were able to bring balance to the page. I was able to show you a little bit on how to create texture, as well as where to layer highlights and where to layer shadows. And I hope that this video was helpful. I hope that you enjoyed it. And everything that you've seen in this video will be in the description box below. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Happy coloring. Bye.